Welcome to the No Fall Zone, the podcast that takes you inside the minds of FWT snowboarders and skiers. I'm your host, Dave Mailman, and together with longtime FWT photographer Dom Daer, we're going to lift the curtain and give you a glimpse into what life is really like for the Freeride World Tour riders. This podcast is made possible by Peak Performance. Thank you, guys.
3, 2, 1, drop in.
Our first guest on this season of the No Fall Zone is a badass human who doesn't take no for an answer. Originally from Lausanne, Switzerland, this year would have been the 8th on tour for the 3-time event winner. As a 25-year-old, this committed Verbier local became the first Swiss skier to be crowned Freeride World Tour champion after winning the Yeti Extreme Verbier for the second time in a row in 2021. Now the star of a short autobiographical film entitled Fragments Choisis, or Choice Pieces in English, this is Elisabeth Gerritzen.
Hi, Dave. Thank you very much for the intro.
Elisabeth Gerritzen, welcome to the podcast. Okay, Ellie, when the Freeride World Tour released the rider list for 2024 at the end of October, your name wasn't on it, even though you'd qualified for the season. Can you explain why you've decided not to compete this year and when exactly you came to that decision?
I think my answer has a lot of different components to it, but as you've mentioned in the intro, I've been doing this for 7 years now, and I absolutely enjoyed my time on the Freeride World Tour, but starting last year, I was feeling like maybe it was a bit too, structuring to my skiing, and that I kind of wanted to discover something else and also push myself in other areas of my skiing. So it just felt like the right time. And I think I decided not to compete this year at a time when what I feel is like nostalgia and not boredom. So it's like a good feeling. It's like I'm going to miss it a lot, and I'm not relieved that I'm not competing. I'm just a bit, looking forward to what it's going to do to both my skiing and my personal life, I think.
It's really interesting that you talk about getting out of the structure of competitive skiing. How do you think that will actually change your skiing to not have to think about competition? I know that you do free riding for fun. So for you, really, there is competitive free riding and then free riding just to make yourself happier for filming.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's kind of like such a big, gap between those two things. But I think for me, it was about kind of giving me the space to be able to kind of see what kind of skier I can become and I could become. And to be honest, I don't really have an answer. Like maybe it's not going to change anything, and maybe I'm not going to be any better, or, I'm not going to have a different approach to skiing. But it was kind of like my gut feeling that having started at such a young age, like competing already when I was a teenager, that my whole definition of what being a good freerider was very much tied to what I saw on the Freeride World Tour, for example. And suddenly I felt the need to get out of that structure and see what does it look outside of that structure, and how can I be a part of it in a way.
I know Andrew Pollard has said in the What the FWT film project that you guys all ski together all season long outside of the competitions. And there's actually some crazy stuff that goes on outside of the competitions, but at the different tour stops.
It's good. I mean, we're pretty much just skiing with our friends. That's all it is. You guys are just watching. It's just a big show. I mean, we do this shit anyway, whether you guys are watching or not. Probably even cooler, actually, on some of the free ski days. I've seen the biggest stuff go down outside of the contest.
They're shredding the rad together. What is it like sessioning with all the Freeride World Tour riders outside of competition?
It's wild. I mean, honestly, it's a wild time. Basically, you get like some of the best free skiers in the world sessioning together in whatever resort. Very often we're the only freeriders there. So it's like, it looks insane, and it's super motivating to push yourself. And very often it's before the competition. So it's almost like a kind of like training runs, and you see your co-competitors and you're like, oh my God, they're so good. There's no way I'm going to do well tomorrow. So I would say it's actually a pretty humbling experience. You're like, whoa, there's like talent here.
And for you personally, when you're not skiing in contests, I mean, do you think your skiing changes? Like, are you, sending backflips and 360s a la Hedvig and Tricomi? Or, I mean, what changes for you when you're skiing with, outside of competition, relaxed just with your friends?
Yeah, I would say I'm more willing to take risks and to try things that I wouldn't like usually try in a competition because the stakes are so high. But to come back to what we've said before, I think because I'm a competitive skier, even when I'm not at a competition, I'm always thinking of the next comp, of the next season, of my, my next goals. So it was also that I wanted to get away from, to not always have like competitive skiing in my mind when I'm just skiing with my friends. Because even though I'm guessing pretty subconscious, it's always there, and you always want to try to get better. And you see, for example, how like a 360 or a backflip, it scores super well at an event, so you're like, this is what I have to train. And it kind of takes away from the fun in a way, because you're always training. I mean, it might sound weird to people listening to this, but in a way, you're always training in the back of your mind. And I think one big part of my decision was to not feel like I'm always training for something so specific, and kind of let my creativity, guide my skiing.
Is this a definitive decision, or do you think that one day you could come back to competing on the Freeride World Tour?
Ooh, Dave, you're asking the tricky questions. I didn't sign up for this. No, honestly, I don't know, because this is very much like a trial and error decision, because I have no idea what my life is going to look like. For so many years, it was so structured around the world tour, the training, the seasons, the dates, like everything. I knew exactly where I was going to be during the winter, and now that I have like kind of this space, I don't know how else I would describe it. It's hard to foresee what it's going to look like for me. And like, I might not even like it. I might feel bored. Like, I don't even know. And so it's a big step in the unknown, but I wanted to try it at least, and get out of my comfort zone, which seems a bit weird because I've always described the Freeride World Tour as a place where I get out of my comfort zone. But now I've noticed that it's become my comfort zone because I have a lot less decisions to take in life. It's like everything's kind of set up in front of you, and you just have to like get on a train or get on a plane and go do this comp and scope the face. And now that I don't have that, it's like, okay, well, I kind of have to, get my shit together and make it happen myself.
So, moving on to the next question, what does your upcoming winter look like? Do you have any idea of what you're going to be doing this winter? Do you have projects planned already?
So I think I'm going to use the opportunity to try to film a lot more. I'm going to be filming with my ski sponsor Faction for sure, as they do like films every year. And then I have my own personal project that's kind of like taking shape at the moment. So I think it's going to be, mostly filming and in a way like trying to, fall back in love with skiing. I think the love kind of like drifted away a little bit. And I'm pretty curious of how I can kind of get my passion back in a way, if that makes sense.
Oh, that makes complete sense. And since you mentioned that you'd fallen out of love, that you'd lost the passion a little bit, that's obviously, I don't think, a decision or a realization that you've come to just recently, probably already at the end of last season. That was something that you had in the back of your mind, if it wasn't even front and center. So how did you feel when Nicola Halwoods announced that the Extreme Verbier was canceled last year, because that realistically would have been your last, you were looking forward to that as your last competition. Was that a big letdown for you?
Well, she's heading into a pretty serious part of the venue there from start one, straight into the Nah, skiing super strong and fast, but tumbling. Oh my.
Oh, Elisabeth going down on the entry into the Eagle, falling through the rock section, and now she's got a big pile of slough kind of coming down.
She's trying to arrest herself there.
Yeah, you can see just fighting to slow herself down. She's still moving with the snow. So Elisabeth is going to just try to stop the speed. That slough that she kicked off at the top, just continuing to move her down as she finally gets herself arrested. Elisabeth Gerritzen taking a scary fall there on the Wildseeloder face.
We mentioned the security team here. We've already got a ski dude or guide with her. She is moving and waving.
Yeah, totally. I remember feeling very disappointed. I mean, obviously it made sense due to security reasons and everything. But, I was just coming back like the biggest crash of my life in Fieberbrunn like 2 weeks before. So a couple days before the extreme was supposed to happen, I didn't even know if I was going to compete, if I was ready emotionally to, put myself in that state again. But I had decided that I was fine, that I was at least able to compete. And yeah, the retirement decision was definitely in the back of my mind at this point. So I think symbolically it was kind of hard to be like, oh, okay, so my last competition won't be at home at the extreme, will be the biggest crash of my life. And so it's like, metaphorically, it's pretty powerful, I think.
Definitely, indeed. And I want to ask you about that crash. But first of all, obviously, at the extreme, there's always wild cards, and they are often awarded to former world champions or former winners of the contest. So if you were to be asked to come back and compete as a wild card next season in Verbier, would you do it?
100%, yeah. I'd sign right now, actually.
Okay, awesome. We're going to talk to Nicola about that. I'm sure Lolo and the rest of the crew would love to see that as well. Now, okay, we were going to talk about wipeouts towards the end of the interview, but since you mentioned the crash in Fieberbrunn and that it was the worst of your career, can you walk me through it? What was going through your head as it happened? And I mean, yeah, it's a little, kind of blow it up and, but has there ever been a point in your skiing career when you thought you were going to die?
Yeah, I think that was the only time. I'm actually a pretty safe skier. I believe this can sound weird to some non-skiing auditors, and I think my mom would laugh about this statement, but I'd qualify myself as a safe skier. So I'm not a huge risk taker, and I always put into the balance, like when I take a decision that I want to be alive tomorrow and able to ski. So the crash in Fieberbrunn, so I believe that was the one and only time when I thought I could potentially die, and I remember those thoughts going through my mind. The moment I clipped a rock or like a piece of ice in my run. But yeah, I can walk you through it if you want. It's a long process, actually.
You definitely do take calculated risks. I mean, we describe you as confident and one of the skiers on tour who is the most at ease in steep and exposed situations. But as that crash, and I mean a few others, because we'll come back. Actually, I'll follow up with that question. You have that go big or go home mentality. You're either usually on the podium or something does happen. There are oftentimes a crash or a lost ski or something involved. But no, it's really interesting to hear what goes through your mind or anyone on the tour when they're in a situation where things all of a sudden are not going as planned in the middle of a run.
Yeah, so to give context, so we had been in Fieberbrunn for a little bit, so there was a lot of time to look at the face and figure out the line and all these things. And I wanted to go into that chute that kind of leads to the infamous, well, it's close to the Eagle Cliff. It's not exactly the Eagle Cliff. Anyways, I knew the run-in was pretty sketchy. pretty steep and that there was like no room for error. But I felt totally confident that I could make that turn. Like I was, I had it in my mind, and I was like, if I just get into it like pretty slow, then everything will be fine kind of mentality. And then on the day I got into the chute, and the snow was really nice up top. So I think I kind of got overly confident. I was like, oh, actually, this is good. I can go in a lot faster than I thought. And in a second, the snow quality changed, and I was already in the turn. And my ski got caught. I don't exactly know what happened. But the thing that was special, I think, with that crash is that at the second I felt my ski clipping, I knew that there was no like going back. I knew I was going to crash. I knew exactly over what kind of exposure I was. And I knew exactly how long it would take for me to stop tumbling down the mountain. It's weird because when you crash, sometimes it's nothing and it's rare that you know what's going to happen. And at that moment, I knew exactly what was going to happen. And I also knew that a lot of people who love me and whom I love back were watching. And so I think what I felt was like compassion for my mom watching at her office, like the comp live. And I was like, oh, she's going to watch me like go down badly. It was a weird experience. And I don't know if you've seen the images, Dave, but it's like, it could have gone so wrong. And the fact that nothing actually broke inside my body is such a miracle. And for me, it's still insane to think about that.
Into another question is, what will you miss the most about life on tour? It definitely will not be falling off big cliffs in Austria, that's for sure.
I think that's an easy answer for me. What I miss the most is the community. I think both the riders and the staff, it's like, it's kind of weird. You like hang out with all these weirdos all season long, and most of the time you don't have much in common except for the love of skiing. And it's just, I think that's what I've made so many good friends the past years. And the feeling of being part of something that's bigger than you is something that I'll miss a lot. And I think that I'll take on for the rest of my life is just that I love being part of a collective, and I love doing things with other people and having that kind of to share.
Sharing the experiences.
Yeah, because, freeriding is such an individual sport. So to have that collective component to it is a big part of why I stayed for so many seasons, I think.
Well, in the What the FWT film project, you call the Freeride World Tour a big dysfunctional family. What's the dysfunctional part of the family? It is, the Freeride family. We always talk about that, and the Freeride World Tour family as well. But the dysfunctional part, I understand where you're coming from, but I want to hear it from you.
Well, because I think I have an idea in my mind of what a dysfunctional family is, and I kind of can imagine like a Christmas dinner where you have to like sit down with all these relatives, and some of them you don't really get along with, but there's still love there, and actually there's unconditional love. And you still make it work somehow, because out of love and out of whatever binds you together. And I think that's a lot of the World Tour is like, of course you're not going to get along super well with everybody, but there's still some kind of like camaraderie and weirdness going on. I don't really know how to describe it better than that.
And now, is it just amongst the riders, or do you include the organization, the judges, the team managers, the everybody else in that dysfunctional family?
Yeah, I think I include absolutely everyone. Over the years, the people I've gotten the closest to actually are mostly staff members, and I personally didn't make such a big distinction between writers and staff members, and I actually believe they don't get enough credit because they're the ones putting in crazy work. I think you should do a podcast with them, actually. But no, I think that's what I mean with family as well, is like there's no hierarchy between writers and staff members, or at least that's how I want to believe it is, and it would be interesting to see what other people's opinions are, but yeah, for me, everyone's included in the big family for sure.
All right, sweet. Well, since you talk about the staff members, you've recently released your first film, Fragments Choisis, which in English would be either Chosen Fragments or Choice Bits. And it's a film that I encourage everyone to see. And it's written and directed by Alicia Sensi, who is the former FWT head of communication and video, and someone who has played a key role behind the scenes in the organization for many, many years. And in the film, you talk specifically about the ski industry, and that made me wonder if you differentiate between the ski industry and the snowboard industry. And then on the world tour, is there a ski mentality and a snowboard mentality, or is it really just a free ride mentality? I know there's a lot packed into that one question, but we can take it point by point if you want.
Yeah.
First of all, when you talk about the ski industry, is that you're really talking about skiing and not the entire winter sports with the snowboard companies, et cetera, grouped into that?
I think I was trying to talk about the snow sports industry. I mean, obviously the ski industry specifically is the one I know best because that's the one I'm part of. And I'm not close enough to the snowboard industry, but I don't think there are huge differences there. Or maybe there are. I don't really know. I don't want to talk about something I'm not like. I'm not an expert of. But it's a good question, and it would be interesting to compare and ask a snowboarder actually. And obviously everything I say in the film is very much it's very subjective. It's just my vision of things and my experience, and it in no way is it meant to generalize anything. It was very very much of a situated point of view, you know.
No, indeed, and I know we're not going to go too far into that, but there was, you talk about the ski industry being paternalistic, and that there's, as in society at large, very male dominated, whereas in the snowboard industry, I think with some women-specific brands. I'm going to just cite one being Roxy, but there are quite a few other women-specific brands that have women at their head and have many women in the organization at all different levels. So I was just wondering. I know in snowboarding that exists, maybe not so much in skiing. Are there any women-specific brands in skiing?
Not that I know of, actually.
So I just want to come back to the mentality part of the question. Is there a ski mentality and a snowboard mentality on tour, or is it a free ride mentality?
That's a good question. I think I would have to kind of divide my answer between how I felt when I first qualified 8 years ago. When I first got on, I thought the snowboarders were, so much more chill and so a lot cooler actually than the ski nerds. And I think nowadays it's not that it's changed, but I think the difference is more foreseeable in kind of which area of snow sports you come from. So if you come from competitive snowboarding or skiing, or if you're just like a self-made person, I think that's where you see the most difference in the mentalities of riders, but not so much, I think, between skiers and snowboarders anymore.
So Ellie, looking back at the last 7 seasons, is there anything that you would have done differently if you could, from training, mental preparation, line choices, coaching, travel mates, roommates, anything?
I'm not a big regrets person. I don't like the feeling of having regret. But I think what I would do differently is try to get a mental coach, actually. I never used one. And I kind of did it all myself, trying to find little tricks to calm my mind before a comp and things like that. But I guess I was a bit cocky about it too. Like, I can deal with this myself. And I guess I lost quite a bit of energy and time, really, trying to deal with this myself. And when there are people whose job is to help you figure these things out, so that would be a thing. But I think I'm also part of that generation, kind of the last generation where freeriding was pretty rock and roll still. So I think when I was 20, I would have found it so lame to have a mental coach, actually. and now that I'm older and that I'm not so ego-oriented anymore. I was like, you should have put your ego aside and just, get the help you need kind of thing.
I don't know that the mental coaching was even a thing when you started. It's really come about very, very recently, actually. And it's true, it was very, very rock and roll and back in the day. And I agree that I think people would have looked at you rather strangely if you'd said, I've got my mental coach traveling with me. But, it's kind of funny because since the Freeride World Tour started, the junior series and the junior freeride camps, there's been people like Derek Foos who've their jobs have become really important, actually, from a coaching standpoint, obviously from a technical standpoint, but they are, mental coaches as well. And that's something that I don't think that we saw in the sport when you started. It's really something that's
totally.
quite new.
I agree. And now that I think about it, I think my generation is kind of like the lost generation in a way because, I was part of the junior scene. So I was part of the first ever like junior competitions that the World Tour organized. When I did qualify for the World Tour, it was still pretty rock and roll, but I was very young. So I was trying to kind of adapt to that rock and roll mentality in a way. And then a few years later, we saw these young guns coming in on the World Tour, and they're very like professionalized already. They've had the coaches, they've had the training, they know how to scope a line. And this is all the things that I had to learn kind of like hands-on. I was on the World Tour and I didn't even know how to use a pair of binoculars kind of thing. And now this would be unimaginable. So I was kind of, I was the in-between generation, like not very rock and roll in a way. And I was kind of groomed through the junior competitions, but I didn't have all the advantages because it was still like pretty new, and we didn't have any coaches. We didn't have anything really, no funding, nothing. So I think the young guns nowadays have it a lot better. And when they do make it on the World Tour, they're so ready and they're winning like the first year on,
Yeah, we definitely see the difference. So like your generation, it was still kind of mom and dad and maybe a little bit of sponsorship help, but that was pretty much it. And then I love the way you say, it's the transformation or the lost generation in between the two, and with the new professionalism with people like Derek Foos. So basically, Derek Foos is responsible and his buddies for killing the rock and roll on tour.
Actually, I'm a big fan of Derek, and he's helped me a lot. And I can tell you he's pretty rock and roll. I mean, he's all of the things. He's a multifaceted person, let's say.
My name is Derek Foos. I am the broadcast host for the Freeride World Tour, and I guess one of the voices of the tour for people. Or I have a long background in freeride, coaching the Whistler Freeride Club since 2001.
No, he's fantastic. No, I love Derek. I just wanted to get a little dig in there. But it is true that the sport has become much more professional. And you see, these kids coming up like Max Palm and Maxime Chabloz. It's absolutely incredible what they're capable of throwing down when they come on. And from the skier standpoint, we talked. I just mentioned, two of the new skiers that have really just come to my mind. But on the women's side of things, I'm looking for the young guns. Would Sybille Blangeon fit into that new generation of hot young rippers who've come through the system and take advantage of the coaching, or is there someone else maybe in women's skiing or snowboarding that you think of?
I believe Sybille doesn't have a ski coach, but absolutely she's had kind of like the very successful and classic path of going through the juniors, winning a lot of comps, going through the qualifiers, qualifying very early in her career, and then just doing very well on her first season on tour. So it's she's a good example of that. And I think the junior competitions are very structuring if you take them seriously and if you're willing to learn and if you have ambition, actually, because that's a big part of it. It's to many people, freeriding can kind of sound like a scam sport, but if you do things like seriously, it's pretty full on, I believe.
The full-on aspect of it, definitely now, obviously, the tour is structured from juniors through the qualifiers all the way onto the tour level. But are there a lot of people doing physical training now? Because obviously, when this whole thing started, I mean, back in the day, it was party all night, get up in the morning, and go up to the top of the beck and drop in. That was literally what the extreme was like. In the early days. Are people training? Are people going to the gym and what's the physical training aspect of the tour life like nowadays?
Yeah, I think nowadays everyone is training preseason, at least, for sure. Like, everyone's going to the gym. Yeah, it's also, when you see the level evolving so fast, there's like a real physical reason for training is so that you don't get hurt. It's not necessarily to get big muscles and everything, but it's like, if you train before the season, there's less chances you're going to get like an ACL injury or things like that. And so the stakes are pretty high. And I think it's just a normal thing to do nowadays. I do believe it's a good thing, actually. And maybe the older riders will hate me for saying that. But just in terms of health, yeah, it's a healthy thing to train. I mean, when you think about it, we're like dropping off 10-meter cliffs on our knees, and if you do that without having like the right training before, it can go badly pretty fast. Like, we're doing serious shit, and I can't emphasize that enough. It's like, we're doing serious shit, and it needs proper preparation.
No, indeed, it is. Free riding is a true professional sport, and you need to prepare like true professionals as well. So, all right, I think we've covered that subject well. You mentioned when you came on the tour, really young, coming up through the system. Who were your role models like growing up, and who did you look to for inspiration on your climb through up the ladder of professional free riding all the way to becoming a world champion?
I think as a teenager, my biggest inspo was Estelle, actually, for sure. Like, she was just 2 years older than me, and she was she was winning everything, and she was so cool and talented, and she had also gone through the juniors. Actually, I think we overlapped on a junior comp for a season, and she kind of showed me that it was possible to do things well and fast and at such a young age. So I would say, yeah, Estelle, number one inspiration, still is, actually. And I think that's the only one I'm going to cite today.
Very, very good answer. I think one of the things that was so spectacular about Estelle and is one of the things that you do so well is controlling controlling your emotions, dealing with the fear and being able to concentrate on top of major faces like both of you, the Bec des Roses. What is the pressure like when you're standing at the top of a mountain like that, and how do you deal with it? Because in spite of your confident exterior, I've actually heard that you stress easily and even get vertigo.
Yeah, I'm afraid of heights. That's my coming out. Yeah, what do we do? Good question. I think that's evolved a lot over the years, but nowadays I listen to music mostly, try to breathe as much as possible, and I try to accept that I'm super stressed, which I didn't used to do as a younger skier. I was always like trying to take away, isolate the stress from the moment, and nowadays I just kind of accept it and know that once I'm out of the start gate, it's gonna go away. And so that's always a reassuring feeling. It's like the moment I hear the 3, 2, 1 rider drop in, it's like
Elisabeth Gerritzen dropping in 3, 2, 1, dropping.
The stress is pretty much gone, and then you're in it. So I don't have like a magic trick to get over the stress. I think, I listen to, I've said this many times, but I listen to Mylène Farmer a lot, and also a role model, actually. But, no magic trick for me, sorry. Just kind of accept it. Accept that you're doing something that feels rationally so unnatural. It's like, why would I go down this mountain on 2 planks of wood? This is so dumb. Why am I doing this? And be like, well, doing it anyways because somehow it's fun. It's kind of risk and reward kind of situation. I definitely question my life decisions at every single comp. If you do the math, it's like 30 times over the past 7 years I've been like, what the fuck am I doing? Sorry about the swearing. I don't know.
No,
if this
it's all good. It's the Freeride World Tour, Elisabeth. It's all good. And yeah, we're not on live TV or anything like that. So it's just the Freeride World Tour podcast. And F-bombs are accepted. It's part of life. I love it. And I do love as well, the fact that once you hear the countdown 3, 2, 1 rider dropping in, that afterwards all the stress just is off your shoulders and you're into the run and doing what you do best, what you do so well. And to segueing into the next question, in 7 years on tour, you've only won 3 times, but twice at Verbier, and 13 podiums. So it's not like you haven't been at the top of the sport, but I was just wondering why you think you haven't managed to win more contests, but when you do, it's been at Verbier.
I guess I'm just not that good, Dave. I mean that actually, yeah. I think that's one part of the answer, and to answer the second part of the question, why in Verbier? I think in Verbier, I'm a good skier. I don't know, but in Verbier, I've always felt like overwhelming support from community, and my friends show up. My parents are there. And also, I believe the Bec d'Arras suits my skiing better than other faces because it's my training ground. I train on steep faces, technical faces, and not so often does the World Tour stop at a mountain that is so good for the type of skiing that I like to do. So I think that would be one part of the answer. And then why? Yeah, I guess that's it. I mean, the only times I've won is one, I did a 360, and then the other times it was on the Bec. So it's, yeah.
There you go. So steep and deep or spin to win.
Yeah.
It's basically no, fair enough. And very good answer. So we're going to stick to the extreme. You've won the contest in 2019 and 2021. Which actually is back to back because in 2020 that we couldn't hold the contest because of the COVID year. How do you compare those 2 runs and the impact that those victories had on your career?
Elisabeth Gerritzen jumping from 5th place to taking the overall title.
No, that's a really good question, Dave. I think 2019 was definitely a turning point in my career. At that point, I hadn't won a comp yet. It was my first win. And it was also a moment, I think, where my confidence was pretty low. I wasn't doing so well. I had consistent but mediocre results. And then that comp happened and something clicked in my mind, I think, at the top of the mountain where I was just just let it go, kind of do your thing. And I believe until now that was the best run I've ever done, by far. It was the fastest and smoothest competition run I've done. And 2021 was very different in many aspects because, well, first of all, the snow was shit. So there was no way I was going to be able to ski as fast. And while I was skiing, I was only comparing the run to the one two years prior. And by doing that, I was I'm not skiing super well. I'm not skiing fast. I don't have the same tempo as I did 2 years ago. And so when I got down, actually, I wasn't super happy about my run. I was I fucked it up, kind of. And then the score came in and it was super high. I was Ari was actually in the hot seat, and I took over her spot, and I was oh, well, maybe it wasn't so bad after all. And then kind of forgot about that because I became world champion by I don't know what miracle, and so everything kind of everything became, it was a big day. But in terms of skiing, yeah, I'm not a big fan of my run in 2021. It's not one that I watch and I'm like, oh, sick.
I wanted to ask you as well, is there a little bit of rivalry between the two of you, or is it more camaraderie between you and Hedvig? Because, you know, that year that you won, it was really kind of, it wasn't even back and forth. You were in there, but you were quite a bit back, and it was the extra points at Verbier that you know, with the win, that just put you over the top. Because I think, you know, you even said in one of the answers you weren't really expecting it.
Yeah, okay, let's try to give an honest answer. I think when I first saw Hedvig like kind of getting on the scene, I was definitely scared. I was like, whoa, she's really good.
This section has definitely seen a lot of play. Hedvig, you know, she wants to find a spot where she can throw the freestyle, and she sure does.
Hedvig! Sick backflip from the Norwegian.
She's very professional about everything she does. You know, she was so serious about nutrition, training, everything, and she was obviously an excellent skier. And coming from the mogul background, she had this bag of tricks. So I was like, oh, okay, like this is gonna be a game changer for sure. And I knew right away that it was kind of like fight or flight, like either adapt and push myself to kind of stay in the game, or let her take over, kind of thing. And I don't think that's rivalry. I think that's just, I mean, I'm a competitive skier, or I was, so it was kind of like the normal reaction. And but to be honest, the year I became world champ, like I 100% thought she deserved it more than me, and she had been leading the whole season, and I felt bad. Like the thing that came through my mind, it wasn't happiness. It was like, she should have it, you know. And she really wanted it, and that's a big difference. I never really cared about the overall, and it was important for her. So it was like, kind of that moment was like, oh, can I just give this to her? Because I just care about winning the extreme. I don't really need the title. So like, can we just, you know?
That's a great answer, because there are really two, from the outside looking in, there's two mentalities on tour. Either there's the riders who are really going for the overall to win the world championship, win the tour championship, and then there are those who are really focused on winning the extreme. And I remember Jackie Passo and Eva Volkner discussing this back in the day about, oh, well, I'll trade you the tour win for the extreme win, and vice versa, because both of them, you know, Jackie had won the extreme and Ava had won the tour, but both of them really, they were like, oh, but you know what? I really kind of want to win the other thing. But then there are some skiers, and you've, you know, just pointed it out, winning the tour, winning the extreme in many riders' minds are pretty much the same thing. And I think it's interesting to see you thinking that, you know, I'm focused on winning the extreme and not so much so on the tour. So yeah, I was going to ask you that as a question, which would you prefer, you know, winning the extreme or winning the tour, but you just answered it for me in the question before. But that's a little aside that I've just always loved, because I'm kind of a geek about victories and stats and stuff. So it's really interesting. And
well, that's why you're here talking to me, I believe.
Winning a world title is an amazing achievement for any athlete, and for you, it was truly a life-changing experience. Would you care to elaborate on that, or tell me how it changed your life to win the title?
Are you quoting me? Did I ever say that it changed my life? I mean, it's possible that I said that.
No, you didn't. No, I'm not quoting you. You did not say that. I am saying that it was, because I know that that winning the title afterwards, it gave you, let's say, a little bit more freedom to speak your mind.
Yeah, and absolutely. So in that sense, winning the title did change my life, or maybe that's a bit of an overstretch, but it did change some things in my life, because, well, it gave myself confidence, and it gave myself legitimacy to speak up about things, and it's like, finally I was like, oh, I deserve to be here, and this is something I've been struggling for a long time. So I was like, oh, if this year I'm the best, whatever the best means, I was just like, now I can kind of start enjoying the experience. Like I have a spot on this, and in a weird way, I'm part of history now because no one's going to take away the title from me. And yes, it did happen by a miracle, and yes, Hedvig should have had it, but still, like it was me in the end. And basically, I think the whole, this is what happened. I'm going to put you through it because I don't know how to explain this. But so I became world champion in Switzerland. So Swiss media, they were quite interested about me and what I had to say. And from one day to another, they cared about freeriding. They invited me, to do the shows and
the
blah.
live news programs.
Yeah.
And I watched tons of them preparing for this.
Sorry.
That's all good. They were very entertaining.
But, and it was actually my mom who was like, on the day that I became world champion, so, we're skiing, I'm already drunk and stuff, and my mom is very serious and very rational, and she was like, my daughter, you have to realize for the next month, people are going to be interested in what you have to say. So you have to choose very carefully what you're going to say and who you're going to say it for. And, I'm just like, well, Mom, come on, let me just enjoy the day, but it's something that I thought about for the next few days. And it's actually, I believe, kind of also what led to me coming out publicly and a bunch of other things. I don't know if I'm answering your question. I'm kind of going all over the place.
No, that's fine. It's a great answer, and I love your mom.
Yeah,
she's
I do
a very smart woman.
Yeah, she is very smart. But at the time, I was kind of like, "Oh, you're such a party pooper kind of person. Why do you have to be so serious now?" But she was 100% right. And to be honest, had she not told me that, I don't think I would have realized to what extent it's actually quite important to choose your words carefully when you talk in the media and kind of have like a fixed idea of what you want to say and what are the important messages that you want to get through. Because in a normal person's life, it's not very often you get to go on the news. Like I was on Swiss news. It's kind of a big deal. It's a very small region here, but it's kind of a big deal. And people actually watch it. And I think that's it's like this short period of time where you have a platform and it's up to you how you make use of it.
Winning the world title gave you a platform, and along with other riders like world champion snowboarders Anne-Fleur Marxer and Marion Erty, you've been responsible for quite a few advances in gender equality within the Freeride World Tour organization, equal prize money since 2020, the establishment of the Gender Equality Commission, and the Women Freeride clinics at all the FWT competitions since 2022. Was the effort worth the reward? Do you feel like we've done enough? And is there still more work to do as far as gender equality in the Freeride World Tour and perhaps sport in general, if you wish to push it that far?
It's very kind of you to make me part of that. Maybe to give some nuance to your question. I've never felt like I was a real reason for the advancement of these things. But if you're willing to rewrite history in that way, I'm very happy to take the blame in a way.
We're gonna give you credit for the push. Yes, definitely.
Thank you. I did talk about these things. I don't think I did anything materially speaking that was really useful in any ways. But I do want to give credit to Anne-Fleur actually, because she was the one who had a tough time, I believe, with these things and who wasn't always listened to. I don't know if I can say that, but
no, you can. You can. That's fine.
Yeah,
And I agree as well. I was there. I saw it. I experienced it. She won her world title and then dropped off tour for 3 years, but then she did come back because she thought she did see that things had changed, and she did come back and compete afterwards as well. So she definitely had some rough moments on tour, and she took a break, and then she came back to it because she saw that it was something that she missed and that she could support as well.
And to give her full credit, she's the one who kind of taught me life in a way. I remember after, I think it was my first season or something, we drove together, I think back to Lausanne or something. And this is it hurts me to say it, but I think she was talking to me about equal prize money, which didn't exist at the time. And I'm pretty sure I said very confidently, because I was so cocky at the time, it's very normal that we're not paid the same amount because there are less girls in our category, or something like that, which now for me seems horrible and so backward minded, but it's something that I actually came out of my mind. And she actually took the time in a very nice and non-aggressive way to explain to me a lot of like really broad concepts about equality and sexism and these things. And that was like also a turning point in my kind of political awakening in a way. So I have to give her credit for that. And then once I kind of understood these things and these structures, it was hard not to speak up because, So I didn't do much. Honestly, kind of my fight was being able to ride the back from the top, like the men at the time. And this is still something that hasn't happened. And I believe like all structural change, it will take a while. And I hope to be invited for that day.
If all the girls raise their hands and say, we really want to start from the top, that change could happen. But I believe recently, within the last few years, in one edition, the women were given the opportunity to vote, and I think you were one of the few, if not the only lady who put up her hand and said, "I want to start from the top." Do you remember that? Or
oh yeah, I remember that vividly. I remember that meeting. It was a tough time for me. I think Marion also voted for that, but so it wasn't just me. But I don't know how to transition this, but I did vote.
No.
To answer your question.
And okay, so it did happen. My information on that was correct. But if you and Marion were the only ones who voted to start from the top, why did the other girls not? Why do you think all the other girls voted that they wanted to ride the petit bec, the small bec, rather than start from the top?
I think it's super important to give context here to all these things.
Please do. I wasn't there, so give all the context you want.
So the year was 2021. No, but it was 2021. At the time, best conditions we had seen on the back for a long time. So obviously, I personally was looking at the back and was like, well, this is great. Like, it should be so fun to ride from the top. So I spoke my mind, and then Marion was also on my side. And this is like 2 or 3 days before the comp. So you have to understand that I definitely have an advantage here. I know the back, I've ridden it from the top. And of course, a part of it is very much to personal benefit, because I believed at the time that I had an advantage. And that linked to a more, global fight towards more equality. It just made sense to ask and to raise the question: Can we start from the top? And obviously, it's scary and it's dangerous. And yes, the girls were asked, and they weren't keen about it because they said it was too short notice, and they had scoped their lines on the other side of the face, which I totally understand and is very rational. So there's really no hard feelings there at all. But I think,
and you ended up winning on the petit bec as well.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, but also I think my political strategy at the time was kind of like start a discussion. It wasn't so much about riding on the big bec that year. It was more like, can we at least talk about these things? Because it was a moment in my career where I didn't feel that we had any like agency on the decisions that were being taken, and I think it was also about like, can we talk about these things and can we be part of the decision making, because in the end we're the ones riding and we're the ones taking the risks. So can we have like a seat at the table in a way? And I think it created a precedent actually, because at least we talked about it together collectively with the other girls, and it didn't happen that year, but I think maybe it never will, maybe it will, but at least it was like, okay, now we can kind of get together and just talk.
When you say that it's the first time that it was that you'd all gotten together and talked about it, it had never come up in the board meetings or the riders board meetings.
I was part of the board for some years and then not. So I am not sure. I don't have the exact like historicity of the board meetings, but it must have. It must have been, yeah, for sure. But I think also what I have to mention is that for the sports to like advance in a way, you also need to give it like the space and the possibility to evolve. Because how I see it is like, if you're a rider on the world tour and you know from the beginning of the season that you're gonna ride the Big Bec de Ross from the top, it also forces you to kind of like adapt your skiing and train for that kind of skiing, and to, you know, if you qualify for Verbier, like hopefully during the season you'll have ridden like such faces because you know you have to. So to like kind of I don't know how to explain this.
No, but I see exactly where you're coming from.
You know what I mean?
I do, exactly. It's a great answer because in surfing, in women's surfing, where they now have equal prize money as well, and the tours are combined, because at one point there was a women's tour. The women had some separate events, some events with the men, some events without the men. But now the women are competing at Chihupo in Tahiti and at Pipeline in Hawaii, and it's only, I think this is only going to be the second or third season that the women will be competing at those two spots. And it is, and exactly as you've said, it's forcing the women to step up and go train in heavier surf, in heavy barreling reef breaks, and it's actually bringing in a little bit of a changing of the guard, because some of the old guard are kind of resting on their laurels, but they're not performing in these new heavy water locations, whereas some of the young up and coming girls, especially from Hawaii and Tahiti, because that's where they live and they're used to surfing these kinds of waves, are really breaking through and are putting on fantastic performances at surf spots where even 3 or 4 years ago there were hardly any women in the water at all. So it definitely, it can happen. I believe that one day it will happen, that the women will be back on the top of the Bec. But as we've seen in the last 5 years at least, the men have been riding the little Bec because of the conditions more than everybody starting from the top. So maybe climate change and global warming will have its word to say in that as well. So
yeah.
Anyhow, on to the next subject, but that was really nice, and I'm glad that you offered some context in there as well, because it's good to hear the behind the scenes stuff that we don't get in the press releases or in the after event interviews. So, staying a little bit on the same subject, do you feel that your activism for equal prize money and other gender equality causes put added pressure on your shoulders when you're competing?
Yeah, totally. Totally. I felt it especially in 2021, which I believe is the year I kind of spoke up about it the most. And a part of me regretted it, actually, because I was like, I was fighting two different fights. I was fighting something much bigger than me that felt morally and ethically right and that was needed. And then on the other side, I also had like a competition that I had to prepare, and so it was really tough. And I actually had a bit of a breakdown the day before the comp, and once again, my mom, I told her, I don't think I'm going to compete tomorrow. And she was there and she took care of me, and she was like, come on, don't be stupid. But no, but I think it's important not to romanticize in a way the whole like activism thing, because it is tough and it takes a lot of energy away from you, and it's it eats you from inside in a way, especially if you're truly like attached to what you're speaking about. For me, it was almost like physical, like this is unfair, like kind of feeling, and it was a good lesson for me. It was a good lesson because in the end, I did what I thought was right morally, and I believe that's a good feeling. It's definitely a good feeling, and I would have regretted it had I not done it. I think I also put my race in 2021 in jeopardy. The outcomes in the end were really good, and everything was fine in the end. But it could have gone the other way.
Luckily, in the end, it all did come together for you in 2021. And you said you didn't have a mental coach, but it sounds to me like your mom filled that role really well.
Yeah, she's a pro. I owe her a lot, actually.
Yeah, I think you do. I don't know her personally, but the more we talk about it, that's the definite feeling I get. Okay, we're going to move on to something a little more philosophical. Actually, do you have a philosophical relationship with skiing? So for someone like yourself who intellectualizes a lot of things, why do you think you've chosen a career where you go up in order to go down again, where you climb mountains in order to ski down them?
That's the myth of Sisyphus, isn't it? Is that what it's called in English?
Yeah,
the myth de Sisyphe.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's basically doing the dumbest shit for absolutely no reason. But you have to... Good question. Well. I think I was always a bit of a nostalgic kid in a way, and always a kid that wondered about the meaning of life, actually. And I think I worried my parents a lot because I was asking them a lot of questions about, like, why are we alive, and what's the point of all this, in a way. And I don't have an answer, spoiler alert. But when I really got into skiing, I think it was really soothing for me because it was some moments where I didn't have so much going through my mind. And this is a bit cliche, and I think a lot of athletes feel this way. And it's like, oh yeah, I can finally breathe and nothing else matters, kind of chit-chat. But it's true. And it's made, I think it's made my life much better and more bearable in a ways, because for a while you're able to be very egoistic about things and just be like, I'm going to go up this mountain and enjoy the way down. And that's the goal for the next hour. And the rest doesn't really matter. So it was a bit of a... Yeah, I don't know if I'm answering your question now. Maybe it's too philosophical, but I don't know. I don't know what else to say.
No, that's all good. It's not too philosophical.
Maybe I can add something, actually. Is that...
Please do.
As you may have understood, I have a lot of, political views and ideas of the world, and I think, mostly it's very unfair. It's a world. Also, with what we're seeing right now, it's mostly not a great place to live for a lot of humans, let's say, and that's something that I obviously think about a lot, and it's draining in a way. I mean, I'm top of the privilege ladder, but it is draining to think about everything going on. And then for a while in the winters, it's just kind of, it doesn't disappear, but it's more calm in my head. And I think that's very much thanks to skiing and nature and the good chemicals going on in my head. It's like adrenaline things. Yeah,
no, indeed, it's active meditation and taking your mind off of everything else, which everybody needs to do. And as you say, we're very lucky to be able to do that in the world that we live in, and not the world at large.
Yeah.
Taking a step back from the philosophical side of the world that we live in, or the world at large, how do people react when you tell them that you're a professional freerider? Like when you have to fill out paperwork at the tax office or at the bank? I
would say mostly they're like, that's not a job.
That's not fair.
And then I'm like, well, it is my job, so. No, but I think I'm pretty lucky being Swiss because skiing is a big part of like the national identity. So people know about skiing, not necessarily about free skiing, but they know that it exists. But mostly I think people are a bit worried about the financial aspects of things. They're like, so you're a skier and that's your main source of income. And I'm like, yeah, actually that's my only source of income. So people are, oh, okay, that's interesting. And I think a lot of people don't really understand how the whole like sponsorship thing works, and that you can make a living out of it, because people are like, the question that comes back the most is like, oh, so you make money because you win competitions. And I'm like, well, a little bit, but that's more like the icing on the cake. What I have is like partnerships with brands that support me and that support my vision of skiing, and that wants to, finance that. In Switzerland, we hate talking about money. It's a big taboo. Like, so people are always a bit, uneasy. Like, oh, okay, and then usually that's a conversation ender. And they like can't figure out if you're a millionaire or if you're like, living under a bridge kind of like financial situation.
Or if you're a ski bum.
Yeah. Yeah.
Fair enough. But you are thinking to the future because you're currently completing a master's degree in law. So what do you want to do after your professional career comes to an end? Do you want to be a lawyer?
Maybe one day. Not right now. I like now the idea of being stuck in an office, in like 9 to 5, having to deal with colleagues and coffee breaks and, talk about their kids' new school. And it's just like, it bores me to death at the moment. And maybe one day I will find pleasure in these things. But that's not the case right now. I'm very much of an outdoorsy person. And now I'm gonna, be outside as much as I can and for as long as I can. And the reality of being a professional skier is, spoiler alert, it doesn't last forever. So I think it's good to have that degree under my belt, and maybe one day I'll do something with it, and maybe not. But I did learn a lot of things in law school. Actually, it's very structuring in terms of how you think about things, how you analyze situations, in a very rational way, and that's something I'm very glad to have learned. And you can you can use it in all areas of the world.
Indeed. And if you weren't a professional skier, what would you be doing, or what would your dream job be?
Realistically, I would probably be a ski bum if I wasn't a professional skier. That's the honest answer. And then the answer to kind of make my parents proud would be, I don't know, maybe I'd be a lawyer or something, but that's not very realistic.
No, fair enough. No, but what would your dream job, if you could do anything in the world, what would it be?
Probably be a mountain guide. That's like best of both worlds. Get to spend time outside, and you get to bring people who otherwise wouldn't have the possibility to do the things that you're teaching them. And I think in terms of transmission, that's like so beautiful. And that's something also I've realized over the years, is that I have a job where I don't really, show or teach anything to anybody. And I've been taught a lot of things by a lot of people. And I think also what I want in the future is to be able to give back in a way. So, yeah.
All right. A much lighter answer. Or a much lighter question. What do you do when you're not skiing? I've heard you like to cook.
Yeah, well, I do love to cook. I'm not very talented, but I very much enjoy it. I like cooking for a lot of people, and I like feeding people. So that kind of goes back to your previous question, where I do like, giving to people. And feeding them well. But otherwise, what do I do? I don't know, so many things. I'm pretty normal. Like, I do what normal people do. Like, I don't know, I go to school, I go to demonstrations, I go climbing quite a lot. I've gotten into climbing lately, gotten into mountaineering as well. I don't know, I swim in the lake, I think about the meaning of life. I have trouble falling asleep at night because I'm an insomniac. I don't know. I'm just normal, I guess.
And here are a couple questions for the gear geeks. The first one, are you a ski gear geek? Do you get involved in the design process with the brands you work with, or do you just trust your team managers to give you the right stuff every season?
Yeah, I do get involved, and I'm lucky enough to work with brands who care about my feedback and who actually ask for it quite systematically. So that's very nice. I'm not super into like design or anything, but I guess I'm a critical thinker, so I'm happy to give feedbacks on things like this hood is too small, it doesn't go over my helmet, kind of stuff, which feels trivial but can be quite important.
Speaking about something else, well, too small of a hood that doesn't fit over your helmet. Apparently, you've got really small feet. French size 35, 22 in Mondo Point, which is a US size 4, if I'm not mistaken. So is it difficult to find stiff, high-precision boots with a flex of 120 more in your size?
It's honestly hell. And if any boot designers are listening to this, please help me out. No, it's hell. It's been hell forever. It's been really complicated, especially nowadays when you want, like real freeride boots with a walk mode and pins in the front. It's just really complicated. The good boots don't come in my size. So what I've been doing recently is, riding a super small, super stiff race boot. And I asked a guy in Chamonix actually to insert pins in the front so I can actually tour. But it's a very precarious setup. Like it's hell for touring because it's super heavy and it doesn't have any flex in the back. So yeah, definitely ski boots, my big issue in life. And I think it's the case for many women. I've had many other small-feeted, I don't know if you say that, women reach out to me on Instagram or on social media to be like, yo, what do you do? And I'm like, well, I don't really know. It's tough out there.
Do you have the same problem with skis, or do you find skis that work for your size? Because you're also, I mean, you're not a big girl on tour either. You know, you have small feet.
What do you mean? I'm not a big
size.
No, but skis are fine because I think so. My feet are definitely abnormally small, whereas my size is a small size, but it's not out of the norm kind of small.
Thank you for geeking out on the gear with us. We're coming to the end here. What's something that no one knows about Elisabeth Gerritzen that you'd like us to know? And feel free to say nothing. You're an open book. We've already covered everything, but is there something that you wanted to talk about, or a little secret that you've been hiding that you'd like to let out of the Pandora's box for us here?
Probably not the answer you're trying to get here, but I don't share a lot about myself on social media. I use it as a platform exclusively for skiing, and I think a lot of people think my identity only revolves around that, but I think I have a lot of other facets to me, and I'm sometimes it feels like people must think I'm so lame because I'm just posting about skiing and stuff. But, it's also my job, and I can't kind of steer away from that too much. Otherwise, I believe I would lose all my sponsors if I shared what I do in my day-to-day life and all the things I think about and fight against. So I would say people don't know much about me. That would be my answer. No, they don't know. They don't know a lot about me. And I'm, in a way, very happy about it because I never meant to be like a public person. I'm just a skier, and I can talk about skiing on podcasts and stuff like that. But I think my sanity also revolves around not oversharing and having that intimacy to do the things I want and be with the people I want without the whole internet knowing about it.
Fair enough. Keeping the personal life personal. Very good. Totally understand. Okay, this really is the last question. Who should we invite for the next episode of the podcast? Has to be a Freeride World Tour rider, but who? You can't say LeBron James or Megan Rapinoe or something like that.
I'm sure LeBron James would run to be on the Freeride World Tour podcast. Yeah. I would be interested to hear Lily Bradley talk about this stuff. She's cool as fuck. Like she's like the new cool generation, very outspoken about things. Probably won't censor herself too much, so should be definitely like a fun fun podcast, maybe more fun than this one. And pretty punk rock. Yeah, I think that would be my take. Lily Bradley.
Good deal. Awesome. She was on our short list. So we're going to try and make that happen for you and for everyone out there in Freeride World Tour land listening to the Freeride World Tour podcast. Episode 2 coming up sometime soon. Elisabeth Gerritzen, thank you for spending this time with us, a little bit longer than we planned on, but it has been a fantastic conversation, and best of luck this winter doing whatever it is that you decide to do out there on the mountains in Switzerland or around the world. Once again, thanks for being with us.
Thank you so much, Dave.
All right. Bye.
Bye.